Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of Creative Corner. I'm Max. I'm your host today. Well, I'm always your host, but whatever. For those of you that don't know what Creative Corner is, it aims to bridge the gap between leaving a place of study, whether that be college, university, A-levels, and bridge the gap between that and landing the first job within the creative industry, whether that's freelance, whether that's under an agency, or anything else that us creative people do. Today, I'm joined by Anna. Anna, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, who you are and what you do.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Anna. I am a videographer and editor. Well, to be fair, you got to be both in this day and age. I do work for That's All Media, which is a media brand that, supplies all the creative services like graphic design, videography, website development. So I'm on the videography team, basically.
Yeah, so that's all media is like an arm of Aspire for You, which is sort of like its parent company, which is what we're sort of both part of. That's how we met each other. So Anna, I think you're a little bit older than me. I think I'm 22.
Just a tiny bit.
Just a tiny bit. I'm 22, and I think you're a little bit older than that. So talk us through your where your career started and versus to where it is now. Was it always a creative career? Was it something different? Was there any like interest that you might have gone down otherwise? Is this something that you've always been interested in? So sort of just discuss us through that process a little bit.
All right. So for those that don't know, I am 30 years old from June this year. So I'm literally new in the 30 club. My videography career started pretty late, I gotta admit, because I never really knew exactly what I really wanted to do in my life. So my journey started with doing a degree in journalism and marketing, which was something that I thought might interest me. But I soon realized that it's not really, the thing that pushes me forward and just makes me excited. But I still did finish my BA in that direction. Then trying to discover what else is out there for me to do other than journalism and marketing. I found myself doing my master's degree in events management, and it was here in Birmingham, by the way. And while being at the university doing my master's degree, I had a chance to participate and basically do a few modules within the media school. And, very early, to be honest, it hadn't really been that obvious to me when I was in my early 20s. But I always had this, it's kind of obvious to me right now when I think about it, but I always had, I always been driven towards visuals. So very early on, I've realized that, whenever I'm watching films, I found myself like asking questions about, how was that filmed? Like, how did they do that on the set? Like, I was always kind of attracted to, the behind the scenes of big productions. But I never really thought, it never occurred to me that that would be something that I could do. So when I had an option to choose a few extra modules within the media school at Birmingham City University, it was mainly to support our MA. What's that called? Dissertation. Sorry. I forgot that word. So basically, it was supposed to support our dissertation projects. So yeah, naturally, I was curious about videography and photography, so I chose a few modules from those, and that's basically how it started. Like, I met a few people while doing those modules, and then it just started as few projects outside of the university. So they have been busy working on some, independent films, little promo videos, some music videos. And I basically just started watching a few of my colleagues working, editing, and then I tried things myself. And yeah, it's just basically a network of people that, do videography. And pretty soon I found myself actually in the middle of things, just trying my own, you know, even on a daily basis. Like, I would try to borrow cameras from the university and just go to the park, just go somewhere with my friends and try and film and learn and watch tutorials. And then however I could, I was trying to learn more and more.
So it's a
And
very
that was,
so it's a
sorry,
very like, self-taught process in which you didn't really do
100%.
a
Yes,
course. It was just more of a almost like a hobby to start off with, right?
100%. It was more of the hobby. I just thought, okay, there's going to be maybe a few filming projects that I will do on the side, but I never really thought this is going to become my full-time job. So, I found myself now almost 4 years later doing just that. Basically, I
Wow.
only do videography. I only do editing. And honestly, I'm glad that, I had a chance to realize that this is something I want to do, because I always had this dream that in my life, what I'm going to do for work in my life will be something that I will enjoy doing. So I don't feel like, I'm counting minutes until the end of work, until the end of the shift.
Yeah.
Like, I always wanted to enjoy it, so I don't feel that I'm working. And, videography and editing, this is just something that it's very exciting. You get to do so many different things, and at the same time, I just don't feel that much pressure. Obviously, it's hard work. You still have to, put effort into it, but
Mm.
it's just something that you enjoy. So
Because
it's like,
it's
it
something
doesn't
you
feel like
enjoy.
work.
It doesn't feel like work because it's something you're enjoying and actually have a reason to get up for. So it's like
Yes.
I'm gonna get up, I'm gonna go into work, I'm gonna work on these videos, I'm gonna have a mess around with this camera, try out a new setting, try out a new style of filming, and that sort of thing is it's just sort of
Yeah, it's
what
exciting.
I'm getting. Yeah, what I'm
Yeah, 'cause
getting.
yeah,
Go
go
on.
on.
All right. Yeah, what I'm getting
Sorry.
here is that you're really interested in just experimenting with stuff and just seeing what happens, and then
Yes.
and just being okay with the whole experimentation process a little bit. Um, how has that like affected your work? Is that sort of if it's like a project you're working on, whether it be under That's All Media or something else, do you try and experiment with your projects, or is the experimentation purely separate from what you do?
No, it's absolutely a part of my process, because
Right.
I always try to get better with every project that I do. So whenever I get a brief of the new filming, I'm trying to find different ways of approaching it, try to
Yeah.
find different ideas. And there is loads and lots of inspiration out there. There is so many videographers that I absolutely admire for the work that they do. And
Hmm.
it's really exciting to know that there is more than one way of doing videography,
Hmm.
and you can actually tell so much through the visuals that it basically opens up your mind to possibilities. Because whether it's the use of props, whether it's location choice, whether it's a music choice, like, you can actually create a narrative that you want with so many different elements, and you can mix them and match them. There's different techniques of filming, and there's different techniques for editing also. So, and so many projects that you can do depending on what sort of industry you're working with.
Hmm.
Because I have been doing music videos. I did cover some events. I did more corporate filming and editing. So all of those have different requirements as well.
Hmm.
So naturally, unless you find something specific that you really want to do, and you don't really go in any other direction. But I just found myself really enjoying trying different projects from different industries, because they do have different requirements. So that gives you a lot of opportunities to experiment, really, to try things out. Maybe sometimes even try different approaches depending on what you've learned from one project, and then kind of bring it to another, but it's completely different, maybe product, different service, different client. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But
Mhm.
this is just the experimentation. A lot of
Mhm.
times I do practice in my own time as well. So there's a lot of projects that, I would just go out and about, just go to town, try and film, even around all around Birmingham, just film people and
Mhm.
objects. I'm just trying, explore.
Right. So it's interesting that you've sort of managed to bring that experimentation into your process as well. Because for me as a graphic designer, I would personally would feel more comfortable experimenting outside of a project and sort of like knowing that I can do it. Like I'm not a risk taker at all. So if I'm doing something for a client, I'm like, I will do what the client wants, but I'll also do something on the side as well. And occasionally I'll present what the other thing is. If I feel confident enough in that idea or confident enough in that experimentation. I had Andy on last week, and Andy was we were saying and discussing about how when we've worked together, he's given me a lot of creative freedom because my ideas are just so simple, and that's what he wants and what he likes. So I have my ability to put forward that experimentation to the client and say, this is what I've been working on. Also, I don't know if it's going to be your thing, but I kind of liked it. I'm trying something new here. What do you think? And it gives that opportunity for feedback. What's your relationship like with your client? Like if if you
Yeah.
want to experiment with something with a certain color grade, a certain edit style, how is that affected when you're speaking to a client?
Yeah, so yeah, this is the thing though. Like, as much as I say, experimenting and trying new ways, that
Mm,
also depends on the client that you have. Like, what's the brief? And, sometimes your clients want very specific things.
mm,
So then experimenting is almost not really the best way to go because, sometimes you just have a one day to get it
right.
done, or you're getting booked for a few hours for filming. So in those cases, I don't tend to experiment too much unless it has been discussed with a client prior to the shoot.
Right.
Because obviously, you get the brief, but then you also meet the client and you obviously want to listen to what they need. You want to make them happy. So, you may suggest different solutions. We can discuss the details of the shoot. And in general, the creative freedom that I have is there, but at the same time I have to be aware of what do I have to get done on that day, because I might not have a chance to repeat that shoot. So
Mm,
it's kind of 50-50. Like, I do have some clients of mine that will give me 100% creative freedom, so they don't really exactly know what they want.
right.
So they will ask me that. I mean, they do know what sort of product they want to shoot and what's the purpose of the campaign, for example,
Hmm.
or of the project of the event. But sometimes they will just ask me to just figure it out. And it's very simple. Like, they don't really have a lot of requirements, but sometimes it's very, very specific.
Mm,
So, you get to work with more difficult clients, like more decisive clients and less decisive. So it all really depends on who you work with. I've got both. I've worked in with different clients, so I know what it means when somebody wants to get something done and you actually, you really go, you're trying to go find a safe solution rather than just go all in and just
mhm.
kind of try and experiment, because there is a risk that you might not get what the client wants, and you don't
Yeah.
want that.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah, we've spoken a lot there about process and getting stuff done within a time limit with and to the client's needs. Potentially, if they don't even know what they want, you sort of have to meet some sort of expectation that they're going to have of you. So obviously, with graphic design and videography is very very different from each other. There might be a few overlaps for sure, but in terms of like when you're going to a place to record or you're on set with someone, what are the ways that you stay sort of in the process, don't get distracted too much, so you know you're going to be meeting that deadline, be meeting whatever it needs to be done. So how do you stay focused? Because I know for a fact that if I was on a set, I'd probably be asking a lot of questions. you know, wondering, you know, how to do certain things, because there's a lot going on, especially like if it's something like a studio set, or if it's like an event. So how do you combat
that? So yeah, I do hear a lot, and that's actually true. Like I really found out that that's true when they say that the creative's work is a problem solving work, basically. So you know,
Mm-hmm.
as much as you think you know that you have a brief and you have, you know, an understanding of the client's needs and what the project is going to be, I found out that most of the times it doesn't really go according to the plan. So
Right.
you have to be really prepared that, you know, there will be maybe times where, you know, you agreed on 4 or 5 hours shoot, and it just kind of, you know, extends to 6 7 hours sometimes. You know, you get people show up late. Sometimes there is pieces of equipment that don't work properly, so then you just have to really think fast and stay focused. And you know, I really change. I feel like I completely change when I'm on the set, because, you know, my mind is with so many different elements. So
Right.
I'm thinking from the, you know, creative brief perspective. I'm thinking about, you know, how I'm going to edit. I'm thinking about the post production. So I want to make sure that my filming is covering everything, so I don't really have to do it in post, because it's sometimes it gets really difficult.
Right.
And for example, you know, choosing the right lighting is just a complete separate a completely separately a different topic, because, you know, it's an art to be able to lit the set certain way, because, you know, then the feel is changing, and, you know, it makes your camera work easier if the lighting is there. So this is just one of the list of things that you have to think about. Sometimes there is the you know, a sound recording involved, so you have to then think about all the little details that are happening on the set. So you have to think about the fact that, you know, if you want to record a sound, you will have a space that is quiet. You will need to double check the equipment prior, because, you know, you don't want to find out that it hasn't been recorded after the shoot is over. So there's so many different elements to filming, and you just have to kind of stay on top of the game. So I really change into super focus, a super hardworking person on the day.
Right.
Even though, you know, during the briefings, maybe I might be a little bit relaxed and think, yeah, it's okay, but you gotta be.
I've seen that in person, actually. Like when obviously before lockdown happened and all this coronavirus stuff happened as well, we were doing an event in a school for like a business day, and I went along to help along with this business day to help people with some business ideas and making that, and pitching and logo design and general, like sort of like it was almost like a career day. The school that we went into, that was doing like a whole day of business. And you were there as well, doing some filming and also some editing, just as like side stuff as well, while like within downtime. I know I didn't really see much of you that day, but you also, like when I was designing a logo, you also were around in the classroom that we were in, and just getting some nice like scenic shots, just of just like background stuff, and everyone doing work for whether it be for B-roll or for an actual video that was being produced. So it's sort of good to see you from hard at work in the office, editing down videos and you know, working on audio devices and that sort of thing, to then actually being in the field and seeing you sort of not really getting in anyone's way or anything like that. Like, because you've got to, especially if you're doing background stuff, you've got to let people get on with what they're doing, but also respect them and their space. You don't want to get in too close, because they don't want to feel intimidated. So as a videographer, I imagine that's sort of a skill that is potentially not come naturally, and you've sort of had to be aware of like where actually pointing the camera. You know, do people want to show their faces? You know, how do people look if they notice a camera? All of a sudden, do they go really shy? So how do you work around your environment and make it as comfortable as possible for the people involved?
You know what? I think it's something that it's very intuitive. Like, you basically have to feel the people that you're working with. And very often, for example, this type of projects that you have been, one of the creatives that was training young people that they, you just have to be aware of the fact that, you're not always getting people that are used to cameras. So, at the same time, you just really want to get as more like the most natural kind of reactions to what people do in the room. So, you really have to stay discreet, but at the same time, sometimes that you have to get you have to get in there, you get that close up. So the choice of equipment really helps in those situations, because sometimes you can just a simple thing like choosing the right lens that lets you get that close up without having to get really just directly there in the middle of the group, or really close to the person. That kind of helps, because it helps you stay a little bit back, but you still get that shot that you want, that visual that you want. And just not making people feel awkward. Sometimes it's just you just have to crack a joke just to help people relax, or maybe just kind of assure them that that I'm not going to be that invasive, that they have nothing to worry about, especially that you're working with people that don't have that experience in front of the camera. It can be a little challenging, because the last thing you want is, people feeling really awkward, because then you can see that in your filming after, and there's nothing you can do about it, because obviously it's done and dusted. So
there's only so much you can fix in post, and a facial expression is probably not one of them.
So just having that intuition, I guess, and common sense, and that's the main thing. And really, if you start working as creative, whether it's videographer or photographer, I guess there is the same principle that applies to both of these, that you really have to think about a choice. You have to think about the location, about the people you're going to be working with, then match the equipment to serve you best in certain situation. And then basically just just have kind of you develop this intuition. The more you work and the more experience you have on different sets in different situations, you just kind of learn how to work with certain people, and you very soon realize, like, you have the feeling of, okay, so these people don't feel that confident, so I have to be extra careful, and you have to be a little bit more kind of at the back and just try to work around it. Sometimes people are very confident, and then you have no issues there, but you basically have to feel the set.
And I think like that just comes with experience. You're not going to walk into your first job and just be like, know exactly the needs of everybody. I think like your ability to walk into a room and read it and just think, actually, okay, I'm going to need more of a lens that's got a higher zoom on it, so I don't have to get as close to these people, or maybe I need quite a wide angle to get the broad sense of what's actually going on, to give people a sense of context in the room, what's actually going on. So it's interesting that you bring up that, and just like almost having a friendship with the people that are actually going to be involved, whether it's on set or whether you're just b-rolling and just saying, I'm just going to be here, there's nothing to worry about, I'm just going to literally go around the back of your heads or whatever, I'm not going to get in your way or anything. So I think there's always a level where you have to say, I'm going to be filming in the room, we hope that's okay, and if I do get too close, or that I'm looking at your work or something like that, or you don't want me to look at your work, or you want me to film somewhere else, that's fine, I'll just avoid it. I think that's quite good that you bring that up.
So very often people don't really know much about the camera work, so they don't really know what you're aiming at, and sometimes all I need to get is a few close-ups, so I just tell them to relax, that I'm not filming them in general, I'm just getting some close-up, so then become a bit more natural. And sometimes people if they are not very confident, then in certain situations, if I want a certain outcome, I might even get a smaller group of people, or like one or two people separately, depending on what I want. So I might just kind of try and find another location that is a bit more discreet. For example, if it's an interview, if it's a vox pop, people in general just feel a bit more confident when there is no like a whole group kind of looking at them and listening to the conversation. So sometimes I have to think about, okay, so I need to get that done, so I may as well just get a few people, or like a group of twos or threes separately, and then kind of interview them on the side, because then they might be a little bit more comfortable with this type of setup rather than just be exposed to everybody else. So these are just, they are the little things that you learn as you go along, and you very soon realize that you actually know what you're going to do each time you show up on the set, or at the event, or doing whatever, any sort of project, like doesn't matter what, but you're just gonna find solutions to make people feel comfortable around the camera.
For sure. So you spoke a little bit about inspiration as well. How do you have, what your, like, who are your main inspirations, and how do you stay inspired with with your creativity and how you approach your work?
There is a whole bunch of videographers out there that I really admire for the work. So from the top of my head, there is one company that I really, 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 really admire. It's called Summon Such Co. So they do a lot of very artsy stuff. So there is a lot of maybe theater shows, some artistic maybe projects that have something to do with painting. Sometimes there are some sort of documentaries. It's very different. Like the topics that they choose are very they're not very typical. And the approach to the filming is so creative. I know I find it hard to describe it, but basically, if anyone wants to check them out, they're called Summon Such Co. And when you see what they do, you actually understand what I mean by that. So that's one.
I'm gonna bring up their website right now on the stream. Hang on a second.
They have a lot of stuff on the Instagram.
You on about?
Some such. Yeah. So you can see there is a lot going on, maybe with LGBTQ community and different theater shows, maybe opera. Very, very, very creative. Like, this is probably my go-to in terms of inspiration. Right. There is another videographer that I really admire. His name is Sam Calder. He's on Instagram. I don't know if he's got the website, but it's Calder with K.
Sure. Bear with me 2 seconds.
If you can find it, it's fine. If not, then. But yeah, he's very, very creative as well.
Yeah, cool. Let's share that as well. I think this is his website. I hope this is the right guy. Otherwise, I'm just sharing this random work with Sam on the stream, getting some free activity from me.
No, Sam Calder. So it's Kolder.
Oh, right.
Let me just.
Right. Yeah. I'm with it.
Can you still see me?
Calder.
Yes, it's SamKolder.
Yeah, I got it. Here we go. Okay, so first of all, what I'm seeing is beautiful photography as well as videos as well.
Yes, he's very versatile.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, I really love that, the color scheme. Like, I don't know what he does in terms of the color grading, but I really want to know his secret. Because the color grading is just one of these things that, color grading makes all the difference in terms of, what your project is going to look like. And it's, knowing all the like house in terms of color grading, it can make your footage looks cinematic in literally a few seconds.
That's
Yeah,
color grading
yeah.
is a big thing in the videography industry. Well, in the video industry. Oh,
Yeah.
well, I guess it's for anything
It's very
really.
difficult as well. Like you literally just have to spend some time to actually trying to
Mm,
understand, different tools. And I think, this is one of the things that I actually started doing recently. I started actually learning a little more about, what does it take to create very cinematic color grading, how to work with LUTs. I've
mhm,
never really worked much on DaVinci, but I did hear a lot that it's really good tool for color grading for your videos.
mm,
So
mm.
this is going to be the next step because I really want to up the game
Yeah,
and being able to apply that color grading that you want and to get a feel, it's just another level.
for sure. Right. I think it's interesting for creatives to start one thing. So obviously you started off in marketing and journalism, and then moved over to videography and editing, and now you're sort of branching out from that just a little bit more with like, okay, so how can I make these prior things better than before? So you've just mentioned color grading, and like for me, like as a graphic designer, so I started sort of wanting to go into sort of almost brand design and that sort of thing, and like doing like huge branding projects. And now it's like less about the branding and just more about the graphic design in general, and just building like various skills within that, because there are certain skills in graphic design that I have no idea from. Like stuff that I want to improve include like typography, editorial design. I'd even go into probably like a little bit of motion design as well, just to experiment and just see the idea of creating something and then making it go one step further and see how much difference that takes, and see what layer that adds to the project. Does it need a motion design? Maybe not, but it might improve it in such a way of whether it actually does need a motion design. And I think that's interesting, because as creatives, we sort of go from one thing to the next and not really realizing that we've done that. But when we look back, we're like, oh, that completely made sense at the time, or like completely makes sense now, but at the time it didn't. And you're sort of richer for having done that experimentation, done that bit, and then just taking it from one thing and taking it to the next.
Yeah,
Um,
well, you also have to remember that in terms of color grading, it's really good to know a dose, but that's a completely separate skill set. And you know, you have people out there that their job title is a colorist, and that's all they do. That's how complex this is. So,
wow.
it's like it's a separate job, to do the color
Mm,
grading. That's how
right.
much work it takes to actually understand, in
Didn't know.
detail.
I honestly didn't know that. That's crazy. So there's people out there that just color grade
Just do
videos
the coloring.
and get
Yeah.
paid for it. Christ,
Yes.
they must really know their stuff in terms of
I don't
like.
know if you ever done that, but if you ever watch a film in a
Mm,
cinema, or well, to be fair, cinemas are closed now, but if you watch anything, try and stay like those 2-3 minutes longer and watch the credits at the end. Like, I mean, I know that filmmaking is slightly different than just videography, because
right.
it takes a lot more people and it's very very way more complex. That's just just doing a promo video or a little
Mm,
or even documentary. Like filmmaking is
mm,
a lot more complex, but that you are going to see how many different people is involved, and their jobs in
mm,
terms of the editing. It's not just an editor. Like there is going to be like so many different people doing little bits and bobs, and that's their entire job title. So like a colorist is literally one of them.
wow.
That's how complex it is, because that's all you have to do, but it's a completely separate job than just being a videographer or camera operator. The
Hmm.
same, and the same on the filming set. You are going to have, for example, a job title such as a focus puller, and all you have to do on the set is just make sure that you work with the focus of the camera, and you're just making sure that everything, every scene is in focus. And it's highly um a technical job, to be honest, because I mean, I don't even try to begin to explain how much it
Right.
takes to actually be a focus puller. But I have really read a lot about it, because at some point, when I was learning that I really want to do videography, I did even consider maybe trying to specialize and maybe try and get onto some film sets, to work in studios.
Mm.
And I've been told that really you have to basically decide what you really want to do, because yeah, it's a very specific like work environment. And
Right.
once you decide what you want to do,
Mm.
that's what you pursue, because it's really hard to change then later
Yeah.
from, oh, actually, I don't want to be focus puller. I want to be a camera operator, or I want to do sound, or I want to do
Mhm.
lighting. And these people, like these different titles require, a lot of work in terms of like learning,
Right.
especially on the set. So as much as videography freelancers can kind of, learn a little bit this and that and kind of mix it up and just know maybe the basics, or maybe they might be a little better on one thing than another, but they can still mix it up, than being on the film set is a little bit more difficult than that. So if anyone kind of pursues that type of job, it's really, and I
Mhm.
did some modules at the university, and you know to be truthful, it doesn't really, it gives you theory and it gives you understanding of the camera work, but it doesn't really prepare you for the reality of actually trying to get into the filming studios. it's
Right.
it's it's very hard. And one of the schemes that I definitely would recommend somebody that really would want to go that route rather than being a freelancer or working for just a media company is screen skills. You get to do it, it's almost like an university, like I think
Right.
it's an institution that basically trains future filmmakers. And you get to do different trainings, and then you get credited for it. And the more training you do, then you're being sent for some specific tasks to different filming studios, as a internship probably, or apprenticeship. I don't know
Mhm.
exactly how that works, but you get credits. It's on your record, and then after, I don't know, maybe a couple of years, you actually being able to get to maybe more permanent job at one of the studios, if that's the way. But it is a journey. So
Mm.
so I don't know, I'm not sure if I would kind of go to the university for videography for that. I would probably try and be more practical.
That's interesting because the trying to think about a lot of the guests that we've had on. Most of the guests that we've had on have been to some sort of college or university to pursue either something in graphic design, illustration. They studied at school, but for you, it's like no, you can just do that anyway. It's fine. You don't. But I guess that's just personal preference, right? Whether just how you learn, or if you feel like you're
Yeah.
making enough progress yourself, and you know that you're motivated within yourself without needing a teacher to tell you what to do. It's quite interesting. I
I
think that
mean,
you bring that up.
yeah, I mean, you still need basics. Like you still need
Mm.
to learn the theory. So, I started learning by practicing, and that was a lot of try and error as well.
Hmm.
But it was never my education. Like it was never a choice as, oh, I'm actually going to choose a course at a university, and it's
Mm.
that serious. It was more like a hobby. But I did I did sit doing the classes at uni, learning about videography and photography, because I kind of tried to figure out at the time what do I actually want to do, photography or videography. And I ended up doing videography. But I did I did become friends with people that did university properly, and they had their degree, and they were saying that they were not really prepared for the reality of what's the market like out there, what does it
Right.
take to
Yeah.
get into working for
100%.
any filming studios. So yeah, I feel like, well, it also depends what sort of universities as well, because
Mm.
every university has got slightly different programs. You have different teachers.
Yeah.
Sometimes these teachers come from a little bit more demanding, maybe background. Maybe they have a little more experience, so they're able to tell you exactly how the system works. But
Mm.
from my experience, from what I've seen, like I know a lot of people that would say, actually, I wouldn't want to go to the university and pay so much money for it, especially when there is so much content out there, you know, on YouTube, and there's so many online courses that you can do. But I would
Mm,
also, on top of the online courses that I pay a few £100 here and there, and I can learn the basics, then I would want to go and, you know, sign up for a scheme like Screen Skills, or,
mhm.
you know, any BAFTA programs, you know, because
Yeah.
these are the programs that actually matter in the industry. Like, you get credits that are actually being recognized in the
Mm,
professional environment,
yeah. Yeah.
where, you know, there are probably certain jobs that, you know, they will require a university degree. So I'm not gonna completely say it's useless, because, you know, sometimes you actually have to have that degree.
Right.
But a lot of times, you know, it's good to explore the options, because the university is not the only way you can actually learn it, and you're
Mm,
probably gonna learn more. I mean, even if you go to the university, you still have to remember that you will have to try and create a network while you're
mm,
at the university,
for
because
sure.
it will definitely matter after. Like, you really
Yeah.
have to have experience and show that, you know, you've been committed and you've been doing something and you've been practicing, and it wasn't only theory, that you actually did some projects, and, you know, you built your portfolio basically.
Mm, mm. It's nice that you've brought up the fact that university isn't the be all end all of the education system. There's so many more ways in which that you can learn, build a network. It's just a matter of knowing what's available to you and whether it's going to be the right suited for you as well. And it's really worth noting, because I think my A level school particularly were like, you have to go to university. It was like almost like they would force the option of going to university down your throat, and it'd be like, but what is the other option? And granted, there were some people that went on to do like apprenticeships and different training schemes, but it just seemed like, you know, if you weren't going to the university, you were doing something wrong almost. Um, Now, luckily, I'm quite pro university rather than against it, but I can understand where people come from when they say, you know, they didn't enjoy school, or, you know, because there's a level of understanding. And I know people, and we've shared stories of them not enjoying it and the reasons why they didn't enjoy it and why they went on to do certain things. And sort of what is aimed to do with this podcast is to find out why and bridge that gap between uh, you know, why they left and where they are now, and how has that changed and how has it worked for them. It's not going to work for everybody, but if it's worked for them, then it might work for somebody else, or, you know, something that they've learned is going to work for somebody else as well.
Yeah.
We've spoken a little bit about sort of post processing, you know, and instead of just being in the studio or being on set with someone, there's a term that is used in particular, I believe, in the cinematography industry and also in the videography industry, is fix it in post. Now, obviously, you're laughing because it's just like it's a throwaway thing. Like, we'll fix it in post. However,
Yeah.
you did speak about earlier, like sort of setting up as much as possible when you're there on the set doing the recording. So there's almost less to do, in the editing side of things. So, you know, what are your thoughts on that? Do you want to try and set up an ideal environment where you don't have to do anything, or is it okay to be like, we can't, this is something, if I get it wrong here, I know that I can fix it later on, which is a bit unique in terms of creativity, because if I make a mistake on the graphic design and it gets printed off, like gets sent off for printing, and then the printing is done and I realize there's a spelling mistake on it, I can't change that unless it gets printed again. However, if you're on a video thing and you've recorded something and you've realized that, you know, maybe you're doing a video where you don't want any swearing in it, and you've realized that someone has swore in it, you know, how can you, where's that line for you to where you could, having to set it up and actually fixing it in post?
Yeah, so there will be probably a number of things that you can and you're able to fix in post. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
it's not ideal, because you don't really want to create an extra work for yourself, because,
Right.
you know, if it's possible to get it right, or you know, if you have a control over the situation on the set or while you're filming, then, you know, you're better off actually making sure that these things are done right, rather than worry about how to fix it later. And, you know,
Mm-hmm.
some mistakes are easier to correct than others. Like, for example, if somebody said something inappropriate, or there was a swear word, it's not that difficult to, if you cannot cut it out, at least you can kind of put beep on top of that. So it's you can cover it up a little bit, but there are certain mistakes that could be technical mistakes. So I mean, to be fair, this could be like, this seems like very silly mistakes, but even videographers that have had a lot of experience, make them. We only humans, so sometimes there is something that you haven't really checked properly, and sometimes it's a matter of not recording something in a certain frame rate that you wanted to, for example, because you forgot to switch from slow motion to a regular filming, and then all you have is slow motion. I mean, to be fair, this is not even exactly a bad example, because you can always speed it up. So I'm probably not going to bring this one up. But there's certain things, maybe, okay, this one is a good one, to do with lighting. So for example, it's better to have your footage underexposed than overexposed. It's harder to bring overexposed footage down than the other way around. So there's a lot of technical things that you have to actually double check in terms of working with people on the set. If they don't perform the way it's scripted, or if they don't perform how you like according to the idea that you have in your head for the actual project, then you can always ask them to repeat. So sometimes there are situations that you can't really do that. So for example, I had some experience in filming weddings, and that's particularly difficult environment to work at as a videographer, because most of the times you only have one chance to capture something. So you can't really even fix it in post, because if you miss a moment, that's not in the film. So yeah, depending also like what sort of relationship you have with a couple, and sometimes you can repeat certain things, but you really try to stay on top of your game, because it's really awkward, especially like with live events. You can't ask somebody to repeat something, because even if they can repeat, it just kind of it gets really awkward. So there are the things that you definitely don't want to do, otherwise you really have a big problem, and sometimes it's not really easy to solve. Other things, yeah, there's an amount of things that you are able to fix, and it's not a drama, it's not a big deal if you have to do it in post. But ideally you would want to actually make sure that you have all the equipment works, that all your batteries are charged, that that everything is kind of prepared. You have a checklist. There's a certain system for the pre-production. That's why we always call that a three-step system, because you have pre-production, you have production, and post-production. So pre-production is for you to be able to actually prepare contingency plans, to have spare elements like spare batteries, spare lenses, cleaning things. I don't know, sometimes you may be filming outdoors, so you have to consider the weather. Like, what if it will start raining? Then you probably need to have something to cover your camera with, or you have to have umbrellas, or you have to have alternative location. So if you don't have these things ready in the pre-production, if you have no contingency plans, then there is no such a thing as fix it in post, because you basically don't get what you want, and then all you have to do is probably reschedule, and very often that kind of involves extra costs for extra probably costs, and you yourself if you didn't deliver, and it's your fault basically. So I would rather say spend more time for pre-production, have a creative meeting, think about all the things that could go wrong, prepare your equipment, just double check everything, and then the production during the day should actually be not have any surprises, let's say. So you don't have to do it in post, you don't have to spend any extra time fixing what could have been avoided. If you fail to prepare, then prepare to fail, sort of thing is exactly what we say. It's interesting, because obviously that three-step process, you're creating
what could go wrong here, and do I have everything or most things in place to where we can plan for stuff to go wrong? Because like you've said, like pretty much nothing's ever gone to the brief pretty much, or, when it's like a day of filming, something, at least one thing has gone awry and not stuck to, if there was a plan involved, if there was, like whether it's to be with time or location or weather, like you've said. So yeah, it's quite interesting that there's that like three-part process in which you have to think about the whole process rather than just the bit that you're on right now.
Yeah.
So yeah. So just a few more questions then before we move on. We've spoken a lot about how the creative industry is now and sort of how it was, whether it like be university and how you picked it up. How do you see the videography industry changing, and how do you see probably the film industry changing as well? Because there's a few overlaps there.
It's a good question. With videography, you probably, you just have to stay on the top of the game, because, there's always new techniques that people come up with. There is, in terms of filming and editing, there is new cameras, new equipment that's supposed to make it easier, make your life easier as a videographer. So there will be probably certain things that will change in terms of the equipment that we're going to use. We never really thought that we are going to have a filming quality as good as 4K, for example. And
Right.
When I started off with videography, I did know some basics, but I remember somebody told me like, "Oh, are you shooting this in 4K?" Like, I had no idea what that meant.
Right.
I just knew that, oh yeah, these are supposed to be really heavy files, but I didn't know exactly what that means. So I'm just wondering whether we are actually going to go further than 4K. I don't know if there's even 5 or 6K. I don't know. I think I've got a feeling that
I
there's.
think there's up to 8K. I'm not particularly like
Yeah.
caught up on the developments of that, but it's interesting how you bring that up, because I remember sort of like 720p was like the max, and then 1080p came along, and then it was 4K, and then it was 4K 60 frames per second, or like 720 60 frames per second. Like the closest I've like been to that is like either seeing it on YouTube videos, or when it comes to like game consoles and that sort of thing. Like, you'll be able to play this game at so many frames per second, and and this is the video quality of which you'll output to. So I think it's interesting to see, like, when you first started this process, this career, is like, am I supposed to be doing that? Is that something of the future? Will I be working with 4K in general? I think even now, like, we've got smart TVs, we've got so many different things. People are recording with drones now. I never saw the day where people would be shooting with drones. I always thought it was just going to be a handheld thing. These different things that you all think are like, we probably won't get it in my lifetime, or that's going to be something of the future. And how that's become more accessible as well, because as far as I'm aware, a lot of videography equipment is really expensive, and now people can quality cameras and quality equipment for half the price that it was when it originally came out. So I think seeing that development and making that more accessible to people that might not have the money, or they're just starting up, or they're adding to their collection already, because it's either something that they need for a certain project, or something they just want to experiment with. It's quite interesting to see how that's sort of changed and how that quality and how certain systems and processes change as well.
Yeah, so I have two thoughts here. First, we're talking about the quality of the equipment and how expensive it is, and it's really good if you have the money, and if you have that in the budget to actually upgrade your gear, and you get some gadgets and just the stuff that to help you filming. But I heard that a lot of times that sometimes you don't really need that expensive equipment, because the more expensive equipment is not going to really make that much of a difference if you don't have the skills, if you haven't learned about the lighting, if you haven't learned about how to utilize cheaper cameras, because sometimes you can really do better with cheaper camera, knowing
Yeah.
possibilities of that piece of equipment that you have, and knowing all the techniques, and how to set it up, and your creativity is going to make all the difference. And your footage and your project might look actually better than somebody that doesn't have an understanding of the tool that they're using, but they have something more expensive. And okay,
Right.
very often there is, maybe a slightly better quality, or maybe you have some, extra options in terms of the filming, in terms of, what frame rate, or, it's better slow motion on that camera. But, I feel like if you invest in developing your skills, you can really easily start with something cheaper. And then
Right.
obviously, as you develop as a creative, you might kind of just have a look at maybe upgrading your equipment to your dream camera, for example.
Right.
But then there is another thing that it came to my mind. It's virtual reality. Like, when I first heard about VR a few years ago, nobody really heard about it. But I feel like if we're talking about the future, I feel like VR might be, a very important part of a video production. I don't know how that's going to connect, but I can see that. I can see the virtual reality happening, like holograms, and I just wonder like how the videography is actually going to react to those, technology changes, because, VR is not such a novelty as it was a few years ago, but
Right.
surely we are actually going to go in that direction. I've got a feeling we will. Anyway.
Yeah, for sure. I think because first it started with like augmented reality, where you would so augmented reality is sort of like you bring up a screen, and then you can look at it, will read your environment, and then on the screen you'll see something interacting with the environment. Pokemon Go does this. We've seen a few games do this as well. And I think VR obviously right now is sort of, at least the way I'm seeing it in my sort of like echo chamber of social media, is that it's being used for new hardware and for gaming devices. Now, the games that are being released on virtual reality systems are not all that great. They're not as polished as people probably want them to be. I don't think for gaming, VR isn't quite there yet. However, the application of VR and what this means, what we can do in a game, and versus how we can take that a step further, and the application of VR in certain different bits of life, whether whatever it might be, it can take it from just going a small step further and then a giant leap further. We see this with, I think Microsoft are using drones and AI systems to like rebuild like old ruins and architecture, and map out like different parts of the world, and like they can get that in so much more detail now than they can before. My first experience in VR was at an event in Manchester where I put this VR headset on, and I was able to walk around an art gallery that students had put together for their final projects. So it was walking around like a physical art gallery. There were multiple rooms with multiple projects in them, and you can go around and look at each project. And I think that was like a completely different application, I think, and the way that people are going to be using it in the future, I'd probably say in the next 5 years, it's going to take on leaps and bounds and do great things, which I don't think people are going to realize that they're going to need or make a process easier. But I think it's going to be very, very important for the application of the next stages, I think, in terms of video, whether it be recording, whether it be for medical research, whether it be for delivery services, whatever aspect it goes into, there's going to be bridges, I think, between two things, and that probably won't match up at first, and then people will realize, that's why we did this. This is this application now going forward. So I know I'm just going to move over quickly to my recommendation this week. So I normally do recommend a book every week for people to read. So bear with me just 1 second. So my recommendation this week is a book called Hegarty on Creativity. It's just a very small book. You can get it done in about an afternoon. And it's written by John Hegarty, who is a famous advertiser. and he talks about creativity, creating a space in order for you to be creative, how you can develop your creative skills, being confident with your creativity. So some really great things, and things I probably wouldn't have thought about otherwise. There's one bit that I thought was quite interesting in this book was you should move to a place with bad weather because it encourages creativity, encourages you to stay inside, because if it's always sunny, everything is always good. You know, is that semiotic / connotation. So if you move to somewhere where it rains occasionally, you've got to appreciate the good days, and you can appreciate the bad days as well. So yeah, that's my recommendation. So Anna, as a probably second to last question, potentially last question, if there was a young videographer / editor / color grader that wants to go into the industry, what would your advice for them be?
Okay, so I would probably start from what I already said before. Learn your options. Find out, what are your options depending on what direction you're going to go for. So, if you really dream about work in one of the, film production studios, then you just, find out what does it take, for you. Just work out the plan. Like, what does it take for you to actually get to that place? Because maybe potentially university is not the best way. Maybe,
right.
You will be able to sign up to a scheme that, is designed for young people to be trained to be able to work in the studios. And that really doesn't really acquire a degree at the university. Sometimes you might want to apply, for a job in, for example, there is a company called Technicolor. I think one of the offices is based in London, and that's something that I know they do require a university degree. I think I do. I would have to actually double check this information, but I'm pretty sure they do want to see some sort of degree. So yeah, depending on what you really want to do, just find out what do you need and what's the best way to go about it, because it's really easy to think, oh, I have to go to the university, but it's a cost. So you just have to be sure that if you actually complete the university, that you're actually going to get something out of it, because otherwise it's just going to be really heavy on you financially. And obviously you want to make sure that you will be able to get a job right after. I would definitely think also about a mentorship. So try and see if there is anybody out there, any videographer that you admire. And very often those people, they offer apprenticeships, or internships. And sometimes if they don't, you might be able to message them a few times and, just to say, look, I'm willing to spend some time with you, just do whatever you need me to do, just help out for free. But at least you see a real person, a real professional in action, and you learn their ways, and you learn good habits, and you learned routines and systems in place. And I feel like there's no better school than actually being able to see people in real life actually doing the job, because there is a basic thing that basic things that you have to learn, the theory that you have to actually understand, but the practical side of things, it's everything. Because that's where you actually learn what works, what doesn't. And I'm very hands-on, so I feel like that is something that is very important. And yeah, just stay open. Like, don't try to settle for just one way of working. Just be curious and research and look out there, because there's so many videographers out there. And don't get intimidated, because I know that that's one of the things that people actually feel. Then they look out there, they're at the beginning of the journey, and they just feel like, oh my God, I will never be able to get to that level. But believe me, I know after 4 years of doing this, like, I know that 4 years ago, I would not really even think in the same categories as I think now. And I had no idea that I will be able to manage completely a new journey. So that's my advice.
Cool. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that, Anna. And with that's going to bring the close to episode 5 of Creative Corner. For those of you that have been watching, thank you very much. Creative Corner is hosted by LifeProof, which is at LifeProof UK across all social medias. So that's your Twitter, your Instagram, your Facebook, your MySpace, whatever. So yeah, Anna, thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed having this conversation with me and discussing about your past and maybe how to think about like certain topics that we've spoken about and that sort of thing. So yeah, same time next week, guys. We'll be back with a new guest for a new conversation. So yeah, until then, stay safe and I'll see you later.
Thank you.